Revit 2027 is out, and this is the latest version of Revit that offers some really interesting updates and enhancements in terms of structure. In this video, we will be focusing primarily on the updates for Rebar, but I will also be showing you some interesting updates for steel and analytical models. Let's go. Now, if you're interested in the general updates and the architectural updates, I've already released a video on that topic and you can find it above in the cards. Now, in this video, I will be showing you the following structure-related updates: the all-new concrete ribbon tab, the new approach to rebar numbering, 3D path rebar shape distribution, longitudinal bars driven by transverse rebar, enhanced spacing layout for rebar, easy rebar weight calculation, analytical model improvements, and finally, cutting and connecting steel elements. Now, this video has been made in collaboration with our rebar expert, Andrei Chalic, who is the author of our ebook and reinforced structures Revit template that has already been updated to the Revit 2027 version, which I'll be using in today's demonstration. You can grab some of his families or book a one-on-one consultation session on our website, balkanarchitect.com. I will be leaving the links up in the cards above and then also down in the description of this video. Now, without any further ado, let's jump straight into the all-new Revit 2027. And here we are in Revit 2027. Now I have opened up the example project, which I've mentioned previously, and let's get started. So when it comes to structure, what you'll notice is that on the structure tab, we no longer have the reinforcement panel. It's completely gone. Now it has been moved to a completely new tab called concrete. So here on the concrete tab, you can see we have the reinforcement panel, and also you can notice here we have the precast panels, so the precast detailing and precast settings. So the precast tab, which we used to have over here in the previous versions, well, that one is gone, and now it's all on the concrete tab. What you'll notice as a new thing here on the concrete tab is the settings panel. So the settings panel has the cover settings and reinforcement settings, which previously used to be here in the reinforcement drop menu. So it was here in a drop menu, and yeah, now it's moved here in a panel. Now, you also may have noticed that one of the settings that was here in the reinforcement drop menu is gone, and that's the reinforcement numbers. So this tool is no longer available and has now been integrated and replaced by the numbering tool. So here on the Manage tab, we have the all-new numbering tool, and this one isn't meant to be used only for rebar. It's meant to be used for pretty much everything in Revit. So it's a much more versatile tool, and it has now replaced the rebar numbering. So here in the numbering options, what you'll notice is because it's replacing the rebar numbers, it has the templates here that are basically there to mimic what the rebar numbers panel used to do. Now it's no longer in a single table. Now it's split into rebar numbering, rebar couplers numbering, and fabric sheet numbering. These are three templates that you get. Now, of course, you can customize them, and I would encourage you to check out the video for all of the main features for Revit 2027. It's going to be up in the cards above, and there I explain how to use this tool. However, now if I just click here on the rebar number and go to number sequence, you can see that this is quite similar to what we used to have for rebar numbering. So here we have all of the partitions, the starting values, the in-use and count. Some of the options are missing, but yeah, this is now available, and you can customize it even further than what you could have done in the past. So for example, if I just cancel out of here and then open up a schedule here, and let's go with this particular rebar and then delete it. Okay, and now if I go back here to manage and numbering, rebar numbers, number sequence, what you'll notice here is that we have this little asterisk for the W2, which is the partition where I have removed that rebar. Now here you can see I have the remove gaps button. Now it's not available for the rest of these because, well, it's all kind of sorted out already, but for this one it is noticing the issue. So now if I click on remove gaps, it's just going to renumber these, and now we're kind of fine, and we can kind of continue going from there. Now we're going to be talking about the 3D path rebar shape distribution in the all-new Revit 2027. So here we have quite a unique shape that we want to apply rebar to, and with the new update we can do this a lot easier. So here I have a section going through this, and let's actually window tile these just so we can see what's going on. And now let's start applying some rebar here. So I'm just going to select it, and then I'm just going to click here on the path freeform rebar. Now for the shapes, let's start with this one here, for example. Then I'm going to switch to something like this and put a couple of those here. Now here for this angled side, here I don't want to use this shape. I'm just going to use the sketch option. So for that, let's click here, use the pick lines. I'm going to pick this line, and this line, so just the covers, and then use the trim and extend to corner to, oops, not that. So just like that. Trim and extend to corner, and here I'm just going to change the geometry to shape driven, hit apply, okay, and now we have that shape. And then I'm going to select it and just mirror it around to the other side. Okay, so here we have some rebar, and it's probably somewhere like that, but now let's assign the path. So I'm just going to stretch this over just like so, because we're now gonna looking at the 3D. Switch to wireframe perhaps, just like so, and now let's click on the path. So to define the path, you want something that goes basically along the path of this shape. However, you want to stick as close to the center as possible, because that's going to give you the most correct or kind of the finest distribution of rebar across that path. So don't go outside, go as in as possible. So that's, for example, this one. I'm just going to select that path there. Now for the layout, let's go with the maximum spacing. Let's set it to 20 centimeters, hit apply, and then let's hit finish. And this is what we get. As you can see, we have a very clean distribution across this shape. Now let's take a look at a different example. So here we have a shape that's also kind of a curved shape, but it also expands on one side. So this is a bit more complicated how to adjust rebar to this. So what we will do is I'm just going to select it here in the section view, then go to path, and here let's pick out a shape to assign. I'm just going to go with the shape 51. Apply it here, maximum spacing 20 centimeters, that's fine. Then to define a path, I'm just going to pick the path here on the inside. That's going to give us a bit more of a better distribution than going to the outside. So I'm just going to pick this one, and yeah, that should be it. So if I hit finish, as you can see, this is what we have. Now, of course, this definitely doesn't look perfect. So now there are things that we can do to adjust it. So if I switch this to the kind of front elevation view, we can see that it's kind of tilted up a little bit. So if I select it here, what we can do is we can change the bar alignment to be vertical, hit apply. So now that's done. Now, of course, we also need to make sure that it's following the kind of complete shape. So for that, let's go here to edit constraints. And then for those, we can go here, select this, select this side, for example. There we go. Now it's following that correctly. Select the bottom and then this side. Now it's following that correctly, and so on. So just like that, very easily you can define very complicated shapes and navigate those with rebar. Now we're back to the previous example, and let's use the Morphed tool. So here on the concrete tab, we have the Morphed Reinforcement. So I'm just going to click on that, and here we can define by rebar or by surface, and we can go by entire bar or by bar segment. So I'm just going to go here by bar segment. Here, let me check the settings. All looks fine. And basically you just come with your cursor close to the rebar. It will show you a direction in which it will place the perpendicular bars in this case, and you simply click. And as you can see, it's going to place a row of bars, basically following the entire shape across the length of this concrete segment. Now I can do the same thing here on this side and anywhere else where I'd like for this particular shape. Let's say I want here and something like this. There we go, perfect. I can hit finish and there we go. Now if I take a look at the 3D view, here you can see we have all of those perpendicular shapes that are now there, kind of following the length of this entire piece of, let's say, concrete foundation or something like that. Now, of course, this can be adjusted at any point. So you just come here, you select it, and then you have these dots where you can then adjust that. So for example, if I just wanted to go from here to here, I can do that. I can do that on the other side as well, just adjusting it to the area where I actually want those. For example, like this. Now, this possibility to adjust through these points is also possible for these elements. So for example, if I select this path here, and let's increase our 3D view, and I'm just going to isolate this so we can see it better. There we go. So now here I can reduce the number of these elements, and I can also increase it. So I can go even beyond the actual shape if I want. Now, of course, I don't want, but yeah, it's possible to readjust this as much as you want. Now, when it comes to columns, it makes working with them a lot easier with the Morph tool. So we simply select that. I'm just going to go by Rebar, and then instead of bar segment, I'm going to go with entire bar. And then here, for the layout rule, I'm going to go with fixed number and quantity of 8. And with that, I simply click here on this, and we basically have the rebar for the entire column. If I go to the other side and then click here for the circular column, this is what we get. So as you can see, it's very simple, very straightforward, and it makes the whole process of adding vertical rebar to columns a lot quicker. Now, there is a limitation, for example, when it comes to stairs. So if we want to add some rebar here, we can't really add stirrups. We can't add shapes like that. So here I'm just going to go to Morphed by Rebar, and let's go with bar segment. Now here, let's go with maximum spacing of 20 centimeters. So now I can use the same approach, just like so. Hit finish here, hit the escape key a couple of times, and then again I can select it and I can adjust it however I like. So for example, like this, perhaps try to make those even. Oops, not that. So yeah, you can't select any one, you need to go with the blue dot and then move that one. Okay, so this one matches, and let's match it over here. So again, you can add bars, but you can't make them gonna go around. So a solution that you can use is just to add hooks. So for example, here we can add a 90-degree hook on both sides, so that would look like that. For example, yeah, we can make it a bit smaller. Here, if I select that again, okay, let's go perhaps with 8 centimeters or something like that. Yeah, so you can kind of get it close, but yeah, it's not going to go all the way around. So just something to keep in mind when it comes to situations such as this one. Moving forward, we have a very powerful way of applying a custom layout rule to rebar. So here we have our column, and let's just go here to annotate to add a multi rebar annotation. I'm just going to go with pick position, uncheck leader line, and then just place it like so. Now here, this is the one that comes with our template, so I'm just going to set it to this one, and now let's look at this rebar. So for our rebar, if we go here to the properties, and let's perhaps expand this a bit. So here we have our layout rule, and what you'll notice is we have another new option called custom spacing. So when you select that, it's just going to default to something that's as close as possible to the existing one, which is in this case a question mark times 10. So it's basically giving us a maximum distance of 10, and then it's going to apply that across the question mark, which in this formula syntax basically means for whatever length of this rebar is. We can of course make it shorter or longer. It's just going to apply that at 10 centimeters, and you'll notice here at the edge it will apply an additional one. So usually it's not going to be 10 centimeters here at the end. Okay, so that's pretty kind of simple. However, you can define a custom formula. So for formulas, you have multiple options. The first one is to go number of spaces times the actual spacing. Then you have the option to go with length at spacing, and you have the option to go for the percentage offset length at spacing. So let's do that. I think it's the most interesting one. So here, let's type out a formula. So let's go with 25% at, and then 10. So for the 25% of the length, the spacing is going to be 10 centimeters. Then we're going to click here again, and then let's go 50% at 20. So kind of the mid half, or the half of the entire length in the middle, is going to be at 20 centimeter distance or spacing. And then finally at the other end, let's go with 25% again at 10 as well. Hit enter, hit apply, and then this is what we have. As you can see, by just by following this formula, it's going to apply that custom spacing where we have kind of a more narrow layout of the rebar here, more narrow here, and then it's further kind of spread out here in the middle. Now it's not going to be perfect, and it's probably not going to give you an exact kind of adjustment that you might like, but it's going to get you kind of very close to what you want to see, and in some cases I'm guessing it's going to be really accurate. So I've heard mixed reviews about this tool, but yeah, it definitely looks quite powerful. And please tell me in the comment section below what do you think about this. Have you tried it out, and what do you think about this custom spacing option? And finally, to conclude the part on rebar, I just want to show you a new parameter that we have in Revit 2027, and that's over here under structural. You can see we now have the reinforcement mass parameter. This is a grayed out parameter. Obviously you cannot change it. It's going to depend on the rebar size and settings. However, we now do have this parameter, so it's going to be a lot easier to calculate the total mass of rebar that needs to be ordered for the project. Moving forward, let's talk about the relationship between reference planes and our structural elements. In this case, we have these three steel beams, and let's say we want to cut them with a reference plane. So what I can do is I can just go here to reference plane, RP is the shortcut, create that reference plane, and then go to modify and use the cut tool with multiple selection to basically use this reference plane to cut our beams. Now this was possible in the previous version of Revit. However, if we made any changes or movements to the reference plane, basically it would break that connection. However, now with Revit 2027, I can, for example, go to rotate this reference plane, and as you can see, it will keep the cutting relationship between the reference plane and the beams. So now we have a much cleaner and more consistent relationship between these elements. Now it's going to be the same with the columns. So here we have a couple of columns, and if I create a reference plane here on top and decide to attach these columns to that reference plane, if I select that reference plane and move it or rotate it, it will again keep that relationship, and they will stay connected, which wasn't the case in the past. And finally, to conclude this video, I just want to show you a few additional updates when it comes to analytical models. So here we have a panel, just a horizontal analytical panel, and now we have the option to split that panel. Now I can, for example, use this grid line to split that panel, and as you can see, now we have two separate panels from that. In addition to that, for vertical panels, we now have the option to assign a role, or basically a new role, which is cladding. So before we only had floor, wall, and panel. Now we also have the ability to assign cladding. So that's just something that was added. That's going to conclude this video of all of the most important updates when it comes to Revit Structure 2027. As I said in the beginning of the video, you can check out our structural template, ebook, one-on-one consulting, and we also have a course for both concrete and steel in Revit. So the links to that will be up in the cards above and then also down in the description of this video. And please tell me in the comment section below, what do you think about these updates? Do you think they're good? Do you think something is lacking? So what are your comments on the all-new Revit 2027? Thank you for watching, guys. Make sure to check out my website, balkanarchitect.com, for more Revit courses. There I have over 120 hours of content, and I'm adding more each week. Make sure to subscribe for more videos, and also I've added a video over there that might interest you as well.